Jonathan Riftin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. I've been waiting for that conversation because very few people can speak about the amount of things you can knowledgeably speak about, or at least we hope.
That's very flattering. I hope I can deliver.
You've done corporate, you've done VC, you've done startups, you've done London, you've done New York, you've done Tel Aviv. So you are well positioned to speak about many things. And let's get going. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
So, my name is Jonathan, originally from Israel, born and raised there. Moved to New York 3 years ago with my wife. We had our baby Tom there. And I moved to London 6, 7 months ago. Started my own company, Clutch, and working on it now.
Why London?
Why not? They say the music is good here. But well, we were looking for a hub. After spending some time in New York, which we loved, we had to leave the country. Trump, unfortunately, takes its toll. And just before coming home back to Israel, we decided we want to explore the world a little more. And because I wanted to start a business, I felt that London is a great hub for tech, for funding, and is a great gateway for Europe, but also the US, as in time zone, flight time, and so on.
English speaking.
English speaking, of course, that's the first.
Yeah. So you've been in London for how long now?
Since June,
Since June.
so a little over than 6 months, 7 months.
Any differences that you can already tell between the New York tech scene and the London one?
Of course, it's a different world. Everything moves a little bit slower here, and not just the tech scene, but it's even more apparent in tech because tech in and of itself moves fast everywhere. So here it's a bit slower. People are a bit more reserved, more cautious, more risk averse, and it's shown. It's shown everywhere, and tech specifically. So when it comes to funding, speaking with investors, speaking with businesses that you're trying to make, prospect that you're trying to convert, everything just takes much more time.
And what are the upsides compared to New York?
The weather is much better, surprisingly. A lot of people say, "What, London weather?" But if you ever experience winter in New York, you would know. And also summer is not too exciting there as well. So the weather here is like the people, mild. So that's great. It's much more international than New York, which is also quite surprising to a lot of people to hear. New York is international, quote unquote. It has 80% non-New Yorkers, but mostly Americans. While here, there's no there's no day that goes by where you don't hear 5 different languages. So it's all across Europe. So it's English plus Europe plus Asia and so on.
So what was the plan coming to London?
So the plan was basically to start a company. Honestly, I already had an idea in sort of like the last few months before leaving New York. So the plan was to come here, start network, find a co-founder, and start building the company, basically. And luckily, I found out just before coming here about an accelerator program called Antler, which is very unique because it takes in solo entrepreneurs, individuals, not companies, and gives them a platform to find other co-founders, build a company, and then if it's something that they find good, they actually invest. So they give you initial funding and office space and so on. So all the connections and everything you need for starting your company. Sort of like a startup on easy mode, I would say.
Sounds quite dreamy.
Yes, I mean, it's pretty good. There were more than 2,000 applicants to the program that started their first cohort in London this year. And out of 2,070 were accepted. I was lucky enough to be accepted. And out of those 70 people, 30 companies emerged, only 12 got funding and graduated the program. So yeah, I consider myself lucky to some extent, and that's yeah.
Sounds like a few months long hackathon.
It's the first 2 months are no, the first month is a hackathon. I see it more. I coin it like a reality show where Survivor meets Love Island meets Shark Tank, or um, and that's basically it's because you have to find a founder quick. You have to find an idea quick, and you need to find your team before someone else finds the people you want. So it's kind of like a yeah, it's an interesting concept.
So you've finished the program with the team.
Yes,
Did you guys get funded?
we were funded by the accelerator,
Yeah.
and right now we are in the middle of another funding round post the accelerator stage.
Tell me about the team and about Clutch.
Cool. So the team is very diverse. Unfortunately, couldn't get a female on the team, but we have a British with a Libyan
Ancestry.
exactly. So Kareem, my co-founder, is our chief product officer. Very experienced startup entrepreneur. Already had a startup and sold it at the time.
Already
And
had a startup and sold it and then went on an accelerator.
yes,
That's quite unique.
well, it wasn't a Wired magazine style of exit like we see every day. So he wanted to do it again and make it more successful than the previous one. And our third co-founder, Martin, is originally from Bulgaria, now living in the UK, and he's our CTO. And yeah, so it's a diverse background of individuals, different geographies, different ethnicities. So that's cool.
And
My next hire is a female head of engineering, probably.
boom, fingers crossed. And if
Yes.
there's any female head of engineering who hears that and who have happen to be in London,
Yes.
then and
Not
if you have,
necessarily. We're supporting remote functions as well.
there you go. And if you haven't filled that function by the time this episode gets released, then please do reach out. The show notes will include every way to contact Jonathan. So we'll also make sure we ship that episode very early on.
Please do.
So let's make it count.
And if it's not too early on, then a UX designer is also good.
There you go. Okay, so that's the team. Fine. What does the company do?
Well, what we're trying to do is solve a big problem for post-sale teams, customer success, account management. We're analyzing their communication between companies and their clients, and we're driving insights and call to actions that would help the agents become more productive and efficient and proactive with their client in their day-to-day. So they'll be able to maintain better relationships, to upsell and expand their clients. And for managers, we're basically giving better visibility into that spectrum of communication. We heard it more than once that all the communication is actually a black hole. It's a blind spot for them. And this will basically give them a better idea of account health and also a way to optimize their team for performance.
The attention prospects get in the sales process is huge. Everything is captured in the CRMs, the client relationship manager tools. They're monitored weekly, if not daily, by the people who are looking after them. And then a deal gets signed, and now we're talking about retention. Everyone who's ever learned anything about business knows that it costs way more to acquire a customer than to retain one. But like you say, the whole aspect of what happens post-sale is a big black box. Not a whole lot of insight. You only have the whether they renewed or didn't, and the word of the prospective account handlers.
True. There are many tools that give you perspective on product usage. So you would know if your clients are actually using or not using your product. But once you actually see drop in product usage, it's kind of like a post-mortem. And we believe there are a lot of early warning signals that exist in the spectrum of communication, in the correspondence, over emails and also over voice or text. So we want to capture those automatically and give insights and make them more proactive before they actually lose their clients.
I love it. As someone who's been to the account services side of the table for years, I love it, and it's meaningful, and I really hope to see you guys fulfill the promise that Clutch has.
Thank you. By the way, it's clutch.ai if someone's interested in finding us on Google.
There you go. Speaking of Google, there you go.
Speaking about the devil, don't do devil.
You've worked for Google for a while, haven't you?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your role there and also how you ended up working for Google, because that's not something you just land out of nowhere.
Well, I joined Google back in 2011. It was just before I graduated from Tel Aviv University. I started as an intern, actually, industry analyst. I was working for the sales teams and looking into these, into the data, trying to give our clients better insights and make them, feel like Google is working for them. And then down the line, I switched to a more sales role. I was managing travel and telecom clients.
You say more of a sales role. Were you quota carrying?
Yes.
So you were a salesperson.
I was,
Okay.
I was selling ads, search, display, YouTube, video, everything.
The reason you said sort of, what is it?
It's kind of like a mix. You have your book of business, so you're not a hunter. You're not trying to get new clients for Google. It's already existing businesses who spend millions on the platform, but you serve as a trusted advisor and a consultant. So it's more like a consultative selling where you try to just get them to spend more, but you always do that in a way that would make their business more successful. It really connects well to my last role as director of customer success at Bizzabo, the company I work for in New York, which is an amazing company that does tools for event managers, and which has the same flavor where you have a book of business where you have to just make them more successful. If your customer is successful in their business, they will just make you more successful as a vendor.
That's the reason I wanted to stop on that point, because that approach is critical in our world and in general. I think finding those win-win situations. Okay, so now you are leading one of the verticals in Google as a salesperson, consultative selling. Next,
after Google,
how did you finish with Google?
I would say on very good terms. After 5 years, I felt I learned a lot. It was an amazing school for me. And
was Google still feeling like a startup at that point?
Yes, especially the Israeli office. We were very small. When I started, we were, I believe, around 20. When I left, it was 70. Today, they're 1,400.
Wow.
So
1,400 Google employees in the Tel Aviv office.
Yes.
And when you say feeling like a startup, what does that actually entail?
Well, now that I'm in a startup, it's uncomparable. But at the time, because it was my first job out of university, it felt small. It felt like a small family. There was a real connection to, the big company's vision. Although I was selling ads, the company was making search. It's not this, it's not the same thing. But there was a really good alignment with the company's vision, and we just felt part of it.
People forget, but Google is a young company. When was it founded?
1997, I think.
I take it back. It's not young. 1997.
It's
Google can vote. Like, okay.
It's true. It's true. It can vote. Its original founders recently left. So after 20 plus years.
Founded in September 98. Fine.
98.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. But the idea came to them in 97. They registered the company in 98. What was the first Google office out of the US? Do you know? Where?
Bangladesh.
Japan.
That's unlikely.
I know. Fun fact.
There you go.
Yeah. How many companies that are 20 years old manage to get to a valuation of more than $1 trillion?
Very few.
Very few. Yeah.
So you left on good terms.
Yeah.
Why did you even leave? I mean,
yes, let's not talk about that. My mom is still upset.
Google is the epitome of success in the tech world. One of the best companies, the best HR and talent organizations in the world. They keep growing. They know to look after their employees in all aspects of life. And there you are, 5 years out of uni, and you're quitting what would be other people's dream job.
True. I just wanted to leave to an even dreamer job. I was very connected to the tech world. I tried to start a startup even before Google. Went to meet a lot of investors and so on. A company called it was called Windward at the time. It still exists, just without me, with other founders. And
Windward is a
maritime security, yes, solutions. At one point at Google, we had someone coming from, I think it was Klein and Perkins. It was really a guy who was working for a very large VC, international VC, and he told us like gave us this 1 hour educational about VCs and his role and so on, and that looked like the job I want to do after Google. And at some point, I was approached by a good friend who told me, "Listen, I know someone. He's a friend of mine. He's looking to start a VC in Israel. He's looking for someone to join him in a role that would help him find companies, invest, and do all the things that VCs do." And I'm like, "Well, sign me up." And
they signed you up.
And then they signed me up.
Did you have to do a lot of self-education in order to get prepared for working in the VC world?
It's a lot of OJT.
OJT?
You learn, it's on-job training. You learn as you go. You try to find reading material or things, to hold on to, but it's the first thing is just you learn from your partners. You learn from peers, so other individuals and other VCs who had done this for some time and are in your same position, so they give you their best practices and so on. But there was also a book that I was recommended at the time, and I would recommend everyone to read that if they are working in a VC or they want to get funding from a VC. That book works both ways. It's called Deal Ventures. Venture Deals. Exactly. Yes. And the link for the book would be in the
show notes.
Yes.
There you go. So VC, the company, the business model for VCs. Very quickly, we raise money from some sort of an organization, a governmental fund, or whatever it is. You secure a few millions of dollars, and then you have an investment thesis, right? You invest in companies of a certain portfolio. You develop an expertise.
Well, some develop expertise. Some consider them sector agnostic, so they invest in anything that they seem to be that could be a potential success. But you gave it quite a good description. Those investors that invest in VCs are called LPs,
limited partners.
Yes.
So a fund has a wallet of money. They need to spend that money. Let's say we have $10 million. We are funding 10 companies, and we expect to see between 5 to 10 times the return on the original fund. Fair enough?
Yep, sort of.
What would you change about that statement?
If they have 10 million and they invest in 10 companies, they won't necessarily invest 1 million in each company. They would invest less because they would like to probably participate in more advanced rounds. So they'll spend some of the some portion of the fund, and they'll keep extra just for future success of companies. But yes, those ratios could be right. They're optimistic.
But the idea is to get a some sort of an exponential return on your initial investment.
Yes, and also within a certain time frame.
Within a certain time frame, and what makes it hard is that the grim statistics tell a different story, because 8 out of 10 startups fail. 7.
Yeah, well, if you twist statistics enough, you'll get whatever story you want. It's never binary, because every fund would have its one unicorn that does 100x. Not every, I'm sorry, but funds would want to have a few companies that would give them 100x on the money, 5x, 1x, and some 0. It's never uniform, and there are always outliers, and funds usually rely on those outliers to actually make their money back.
If we have to simplify for the conversation, so out of 10 companies, 5 or 6 will go bust. Nothing's going to happen. Suck the money, never see any return. 2 or 3 maybe break even, maybe be sold for parts later, and a good fund would have 1 or 2 exits that are supposed to give the exponential return and cover for the losses.
Yep, more or less.
Super risky business.
It is.
And you're coming from a Google mature company with really a mature forecasting methodologies, and you have to start guessing your way towards $1 billion company.
Yes.
Walk us through the first couple of weeks when you're still trying to find your feet.
You immediately start talking to a lot of entrepreneurs who come to seek funding from your VC. At first place, you try to really understand what makes a good presentation, what supposedly makes a good business. And if you see one, you would never know. But once you see 20, you get a baseline of what seemed good, what did seem bad, and then if you start seeing the good, you start spotting the good ones or the ones that make an impression that supposedly would be very successful. You start diving deep into those specific sectors. So if you get a company that looks promising, you start really diving deep into that sector theme. You start interviewing people from that sector to give you some more knowledge from their experience and so on. So it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of asking questions. You have to be 10 times more curious and just asking questions all the time.
Okay, you're a man, so I hope.
Yeah, last I checked.
I hope we can get an atypical answer to this question. But
okay.
Imposter syndrome.
Oof. Why is that? Why is it related to gender?
Because men struggle to admit they have no idea what they're doing.
Oh, okay. Well, imposter syndrome is actually a very classic syndrome that happens in Google, and I assume other, top 4 companies, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and so on. Whenever you're in an environment where it's perceived as excellent and has this amazing filtering mechanism, you would feel that everyone else is a little better than you, and you would walk in the morning into the office and sometimes think, how did I get here? When will they realize that I'm not as smart as everyone else? So yeah, it's very popular.
So you felt it.
I felt it. Yes.
And when you moved to VC, you felt it again?
Yes, but in a different flavor. So when you're in a VC and you're quite young and not experienced as some of the partners who usually come from either long years of being an executive or ex-entrepreneurs who succeeded in building companies, then there's this thing where you sort of like every meeting with entrepreneur who comes to seek funding from your VC is like an interview. It's like a date, right? And you meet amazing, super smart individuals, and you sit there and you're like, what am I doing here? They are much smarter than me. They should be sitting in this chair and making the decision for me. I'm not supposed to interview a PhD scientist from whatever university who invented this crazy device, and I should be the one who decide if he would get money or not. Says who? So that's kind of a different take on imposter syndrome and a VC.
That's a very humble perspective. So it sounds like having this perspective would force you into being super diligent and meticulous about the decision you make, the investment decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember a few entrepreneurs that wowed you in their presentations?
It was quite a while ago. And I can't remember distinctly, a person or a company, but I remember that every 10 meetings that I took, I had at least 1 or 2 individuals that were like, oh my God, these guys are amazing, or gals are amazing, and I would definitely I don't want to invest in them. I want to join them, and I want to build whatever they're building together with them.
I love it that you say that because you've done Google, right? We said like it's the pinnacle of tech, and then you went to the afterlife, VC. A lot of people who have made it in business go and start their own VCs now, and you're describing a situation in which you're on that side of the table and you want to go back to being an operator, to rolling up your sleeves and do some work. Was that frustrating? Did you enjoy your status and your influence as an investor while also thinking, oh my God, I should be doing the work?
Yes, it was definitely frustrating. And to be honest, when I left Google in my exit interview with May Brand, who was the country director for Google in Israel, and now is basically managing a huge region of, I'm not like Russia, Africa, and other territories of Google. He told me, I'm not sure, I don't know why you're doing this. This is an old people's job. You're too young for that. And I'm like, but I have this opportunity. I think I can, do it well, and so on. He was right. It's not an old people, but it's a job for people who, it's a position for people who are more experienced. And I felt that, and I felt that frustration of basically wanting to roll my sleeve and doing things, and not necessarily just sitting and deciding if they would get the money or not.
When did you realize he was right?
Halfway through, like after 6 months.
Okay, so it's not like second day in the office and I'm like, oh, what am I doing?
No, of course not. No, there was a long honeymoon period.
And when did the penny drop?
When I started feeling like I want to do something. I don't want to just sit and listen to other ideas every day. Like I want to see those ideas come to life.
So restlessness rather than a reverse eureka moment.
Yes, exactly.
What's a day like in the life of a VC? Generally speaking, don't have to go into details. I wanna get to the juicier parts of your resume, but just so people would understand what they're getting themselves into.
It's a mix of meetings with entrepreneurs. Could be meetings with existing portfolio companies. Evenings are usually reserved to events. It's a function where you have to go to events all the time, at least at the beginning, until you're tired of that. And it's a lot of networking. So a lot of building your network, a lot of meeting entrepreneurs, and then a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, and as you said before, you have to dive deep into those ideas to poke holes and see if you want to invest them or not. So I would say it's like third meetings, third thinking, third networking.
And then you left the VC world and you said, okay, enough is enough. I want to go back into the action, back into the trenches, and you left. What was it like leaving the dream job and going back into the unknown and the uncertainty and the unpleasantness of actually building a company?
So I'll have to admit that I left in a good way.
It sounds like it's impossible to have fights with you.
I'm not a guy to have fights with. My wife got an offer from her company to. She was working at Yahpo, which is a brilliant SaaS Israeli company, and she was offered to be the first marketing person in New York.
She was my client back then when I was working for LinkedIn.
Oh.
So I was heartbroken to having my point of contact in Yahpo move to New York.
Okay. That's a small world. And we said like, okay, if we move to New York, I have to leave the VC because it's a local office. I said, okay, let's move to New York. I mean, what could be a better, it's not going backwards. For me, it was exploring a new geography and learning from doing something else.
Yeah.
But moving to New York is expensive. New York is expensive in itself. So I intentionally did not want to start a company there, but I wanted to join a company that I could learn from. So I had a great opportunity to join Taboola.
What did you want to learn at this point? Because you've done Google and you've done VC, and what's there to learn? What piqued your interest?
Well, I wanted to see, corporate is a beast where you can learn a lot about how they operate, but it's such a large organization that you don't really have the ability to see in more intimately different divisions, be close to product or operations or management, or even see the CEO. I mean, you never see the CEO of Google, right?
Yeah.
Only in, over video.
So very clear roles and responsibility, very limited remit in your
Mm-hmm.
job, and very siloed.
Exactly, especially because it's a remote office. So it also has its implication where you're not part of the HQ. So we moved to New York. I joined Taboola. Taboola's office in New York is amazing, and I watched Adam, the CEO of Taboola, walk into the office. When he was there, not on a plane or in a different office, but you could just see him every day. You could approach him. You can talk to him. He's very approachable.
Taboola is a content discovery platform.
It is.
And when you came in, what role did you take?
So I joined. That was actually the fun part because I joined a team which was supposed to be like a startup within the company. The company wasn't small in and of itself; it was 500 employees at the time. And by the way, today it's I think 1,500,
Including
so.
or not including the Outbrain
Not including
acquisition?
Outbrain
Okay.
yet.
So
So it's going to be, I believe it's going to be 2,000 people.
just a quick recap, Taboola and Outbrain are two competitors that came up with the category of content discovery, more or less. And after a long rivalry, they decided to join hands, and Taboola acquired Outbrain. This is one of the big tech stories of 2019. The acquisition and the merge is still unfolding, but at that point, it was not even discussed. And you came in at what role?
So they were starting a self-service platform. Before I joined, if you wanted to advertise with Taboola, and by the way, just for the listeners, content discovery is basically the recommendations for articles below the articles that you read. So from the web or around the web and so on, you may like. So that's Taboola and Outbrain. There wasn't the ability to just log on to start your campaign and advertise on Taboola. You had to you have to have a managed service.
You need to be sold to.
You need to be sold to, exactly. So I joined a team that was starting the self-service platform, which meant a lot of marketing, acquisition, and I was in charge of developing the agency arm for that and partnerships.
Your wife has a new job, you have a new job, you're in a new country.
Yes.
Baby Tom, was he already
No.
in existence?
No.
Okay, so
Not in
still in the oven?
Yes.
Okay.
Not even in the oven.
Not even in the oven. Okay.
You know.
Okay, still a concept.
Still a concept.
Okay, still a concept. Startups in New York, you are an Israeli, direct, sometimes not methodical. Maybe your time with Google and with a VC helped you make up for that deficiency in a way. What was it like launching a business unit in a new startup in New York?
So it's New York and it's the US. You can just look at it as in New York because you have to look at the bigger picture, especially with that kind of platform. It was overwhelming at first. Everything moves much faster in New York. Just as an example, you can't really stand on the sidewalks. You have to walk. Like you can't just stop and look at your phone and look at the maps and decide where to go. You have to be always on the move, and it's on the sidewalks, and it's also in business. Everything moves much faster, and you just make constant decisions. You have to take a lot of bets, and it's really interesting. People are different. They're more American, and there's this learning period where you have to understand what Americans mean when they talk to you, because they say one thing, they mean another. They're not direct, as you mentioned. They're not like Israelis, and it's different. Especially the office was like 90% Americans.
You're mentioning taking decisions and placing bets, and I think that's it's not a natural thing for an employee in a workplace to be constantly occupied with making decisions. And this is one of the key characteristics of startups. You have to make decisions. You can't afford not to make decisions. You can't afford to stay put. Money being an important resource, time is even more important. So the pace of things dictates constant decision making
Mm-hmm.
and constant decision making with lack of data, where you are the responsible adult in the room and there's no one to defer the decision to? Did you find yourself struggling with the responsibility and the weight of it?
It wasn't easy, to say the least. Um, and Fortunately, I had a lot of people that I could consult with. My manager, Alad, who was based in Israel, had a lot of experience. So he really pushed me into, gave me the right guidance as much as he could. But yeah, I mean, I just had to try different things and see what works. And at some point, I had to, pick up the phone and make cold calls to Nowhere America agencies who, just to tell them about Taboola. And it's kind of like a user interview mixed with selling. It was weird, but you have to try that.
Going back to your sales day, all of a sudden you can't be just the consultant that already sells the product that everyone's using.
Exactly.
You have to be the person who's trying to kind of like swim upstream. Hey guys, there's this new thing going on that you absolutely have to try out.
Yeah. And that's an interesting part because at Google, you're used to having so many resources. So potentially I could just have someone who would make those calls. But then I found myself with no one to do that. I had to do everything. So that was weird.
Did you expect anything else when you came in? Or did you realize actually I wanted to do the work and now I do the work?
I knew it would have to be a lot of hands-on. I was told, and I knew it would have to be a lot of hands-on in the beginning. So, I mean, I was okay with that.
Okay. And another thing I want to confront you with is you are this big fancy hire who's done Google, who's done VC, and now you find yourself in uncharted territory having to ask questions and not having the right answers. And how does that influence your identity, your ego, your sense of comfort at work?
It's a good question because you are being expected. There are high expectations from you. You really have to deliver. And if you feel that if you're not delivering, then you're failing. And you're failing someone. And you're failing your manager as well because he's supposed to deliver as well. It's cascading. There's a ripple effect. But I mean, if there's the right culture of fail fast, go do something else, eventually you'll make it work, then it's okay. So I think it boils down to the culture.
Did you ever fail substantially before that point in your life? Not to say that you have failed then, but have you experienced failure substantially?
Yeah, I would say so. Few times. I mean, failing is okay as long as you learn from it and then you move on and next time you make it better. In the army, I was in the process of sort of like a very elite unit and
intelligence or combat?
It's a combination actually, but let's not talk about it here. Unfortunately, a month before graduating that, I was told that I'm not going to continue. So I had to switch roles. And this was a big thing because I was supposed to stay for 3 extra years just before that. So I kind of like had my future already pictured based on that. And once I was told that I'm not going to graduate, I had to rethink like the next 4 years.
The reason it's critical and the reason I would count that as a failure is because for folks who grow up in Israel, what are you going to do in the army is a question you're asked from very early on, and it is your identity. For years after your service, you're still being asked, what have you done in the army? And people judge you and categorize you, and the people you associate yourself with are in large parts people you've been with in the army. So it's a huge component of a person's track record and identity. And if that narrative you were telling yourself through grueling training and the laborious filtering process, if that had failed and you find yourself very close to the finish line but then being diverted someplace else,
it's
okay.
It was quite big, but I think down the line. First of all, in retrospect, it was 12 years ago, so it's like a glimpse.
Yeah.
So it's not that critical, and I managed to find a good path afterwards, and that was
So
good.
Taboola,
Yeah.
you're starting a startup within a startup.
Yep.
How long did you stay with the company?
I stayed, I think, a little over than a year, and then I was actually I little over than a year, and when I joined, we were 400. When I left, we were 800. I really wanted to be part of something smaller. That's why I joined Taboola in the first place. I felt, okay, it's a startup, but after being a year or so in Taboola, it wasn't a startup anymore, and it was a reality check for me, and I decided, okay, I want something even smaller.
Small as in, I know the names of everyone I'm working with.
Yeah, I found this amazing company called Visible.
As a
And
family, as a
yes,
family unit. Um,
as a family unit.
family unit.
Okay.
You, your wife,
Oh, okay.
the unreleased feature that is called Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have that tolerance for risk?
Yes, definitely. It's not. I mean, what is risk? I feel lucky enough that I always had sort of like
Safety net?
something, a safety nets. I always had a safety net, whether it's my family, my wife's family, very supportive.
Was there ever a conversation about, hey, honey, listen, I know I have this good job which I'm doing well in,
Yes,
and I know we're about to grow as a family, and
we were actually going to. That's it was yeah.
so now I want to go into this big unknown with a company who's, I don't know what, 30, 40 people,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be like, I don't know, the fifth employee in New York. What do you think? Is that a conversation?
It is a conversation. It wasn't. It did not go like that. I did not ask it this way, but it was a conversation. Like,
How did
okay,
you
so
ask it?
it's more. You know what? It actually came from her because at some point she told me, "Listen, I don't. It doesn't look like you're having too much fun at what you're doing. Why don't you find something that gives you more enjoyment and fulfillment?" And like, she knows me better than I do, and I started, putting my ears to the ground, having some conversations with people in the community, and luckily it was quite fast when I was speaking to Alon, who's the one of the founders of Visibo and the chief customer officer. We had lunch, we talked, and a month after he said, "Listen," a month after, and in that month they successfully raised $16 million. He approached me and said, "Listen, I have a position for you."
How big was the company back then?
So they were between 40 and 50 people.
Okay, so that's kind of like the right size, the size you wanted.
Yes, that was a perfect size.
Okay, beyond an idea, beyond the proof of concept, but before product market fit.
No, there was market fit at then. Yeah.
Okay, so just a moment before scale.
Yes, before huge scale.
Okay, got it,
Yes.
got it, got it. So first in the office, visible startup. What do they have? What don't they have as a company?
Alon was based in New York. They already had a few functions of operations, customer success, marketing. I think they did the right move to start these supporting functions in New York early on. And this is something I think it's important for listeners who are based outside of the US and who are starting their own business and trying to target that market. It's not easy doing it remote. People feel that they can just launch a campaign on Facebook or Google and will just get customers from the US. But when you're actually there in the market, you get a much better sense of what's happening there and what's the right approach and the language and the competition. It's just much better for companies to be based in their target market. So that's just side note. So those kind of functions: sales, customer success, operations, marketing. Everything you need for a go-to-market in a company. Basically, the only thing that was in Israel was the R&D.
Did the visible match your expectations and needs coming into a startup? You're kind of on a search now. You wanted to move from Google to a place where you can have more impact. VC or close to the table but far from the action. Taboola, you were the table, and and now you have to build something. So
yeah, it's definitely met my expectations. being very close to the founders, having a lot of impact, helping to build something and see it grow exponentially.
Impact is a word that comes back a lot in the podcast. What does impact mean, really?
I think impact is a change that is visible, or you can feel it fast enough in a short period of time, because we all make an impact. Some people, it just takes them 10, 20 years. Some people, it takes them 1 year. So if you're joining a company that, just for the sake of numbers, is 1 million ARR, and then the following year does 3 million ARR, you see that change quite clearly.
ARR, annual recurring revenue,
Yeah.
basically money that will come in to the business. So you're saying I'm a bigger piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
Impact is sometimes could be self-serving, you know?
What do you mean?
I mean that it feels really good to be impactful and to be heard and to see your work come to life. But it's not a purpose on its own. Did you find it hard to align your impact and motivation with the company's priorities and the founder's priorities and the way of work?
That's a complicated question.
So you go in as an outsider, you immediately see everything that could be done better. As a startup, half of the place is on fire, and you think you can fix it all.
Yeah, true. Well, it's it's a matter of perception. It's not real. It's not reality. Like sometimes it's good to have fresh set of eyes on situations, and people think they come to a place, they see everything's broken, they can fix it, but then I think it requires a bit of maturity to understand that if you trust enough the founders, you would understand that they have a better picture of what's going on. Not saying that they're 100% right, but they probably have more context to why things are the way they are. And I'm not saying that you just have to accept it, but you have to take in, and you have to be patient. That's a learning that I had from Taboola when I joined there to the New York office. I tried to make a lot of changes and use a lot of resources, and I quite quickly saw some friction from other divisions and other people who were just there before me. So when I joined Bizzabo, I decided that I would be a bit more patient and listen, learn from my environment before I speak up and before I point fingers on problems and try to solve things that I suspect is broken.
How long before you felt comfortable to start voicing your concerns?
2 days. I'm joking. No, I think it's, I would give it at least 2 months.
2 months.
2 months, at least. Because you have to learn your own role, the team that you manage or the team that you work at. You need to get acquainted with the other teams. You need to make sure, you develop your own authority, what you do. And you don't want to just create clashes. So you take everything in, and I think after at least a month or two, then you can start saying, okay, let's try to understand how to make things better.
Going back to what I asked about Taboola and the expectations that were on you, did you feel a similar set of expectations coming into Bizzabo?
Yes, and I would say even higher to some degree. I was given it kind of like took a chance on me because I never worked at a SaaS company and did the role that I did. So they just relied on the fact that I'm capable of learning fast and being able to, to make it happen.
What was the role you took on?
The role was director of customer success. So I was managing teams of customer success, not something I did before that. But yeah, so again, a lot of learning, a lot of listening, reading, asking questions from people who have experience in the role, even before starting and then while on the job.
Did Bizzabo raise another round when you were there?
Yes, they did. A year after, they raised 27 million.
What does it feel like being in a company that's killing it on one hand, but still reliant on venture capital money to exist on the other?
To be honest, I did not have the intimate connection to the P&L, to the bottom line.
So you didn't feel the pressure that's coming from the burnout rate, or
No, no.
would you give credit to your managers for protecting you from that type of pressure?
I would give him credit for doing an amazing job and just like managing the resources in the right way, but not making it seem as if there's like not enough. So there was good office space, good environment, the right perks, not too much, but just enough so we won't have to complain that there's bad coffee in the kitchen.
Yeah, you're in New York. You have to be competitive. Talent is
Exactly.
expensive, super competitive. There's a baseline. You need to match the benchmark. Otherwise, you're out of the ballpark. So far, you look over your LinkedIn and your career, and I don't want to say it's going from one success to the other.
Don't say that.
And because I know it's not. I know it's not. But walk me through some of the hard days. Walk me through some of those times where you're like, you know what? I'm actually doing a role I'm doing for the first time in my life, and I don't know that I have the right answer, or I've just took a wrong turn.
So I think it's at some point at Taboola I felt that I'm not managing to. I wasn't exactly set up for success for the role that I took. I felt perhaps I was brought a bit early on before the product was mature enough. When I say the product, I'm talking about the self-service platform. I felt I was banging my head and trying to make things work, but it was just an uphill battle. So I tried one way, I tried another, and that was a bit frustrating. And I tried to think what would make me happy, and then at some point I just realized that doing something else.
So many times in your career so far, you're doing things for the first time.
Okay, yeah, yes.
Like you've never, not once you told me, listen, I was an account manager, then I became the manager of account managers. Like it just doesn't seem to happen. You're managing to somehow create a linear and progression, but without being linear at all.
Yes, I avoided doing something linear, or maybe I was misfortunate enough to not have I didn't have the opportunity to have a linear progression. And I remember quite clearly someone who was, I think it was, I don't remember who, but I saw a lecture about different pathways in career. One is linear and one is
Squiggly.
squiggly. So I think I enjoyed more this squiggly one. I think you learn more, you learn faster.
And what advice would you give to people who are going through their entire careers doing things for the first time?
First of all, do it. um, it's like jumping from a really high cliff. Well, that's not a good. No, not a cliff. Don't jump from a cliff.
Don't jump from a cliff. You hear that? Don't jump from a
Don't jump
cliff.
from a cliff. Jumping in the water. Just jump. At the end of the day, if you think the water will be cold, it will be cold. But if you swim a little bit, it'll get warmer. But you have to jump.
I was wondering where you're going to take the water analogy, but I like it.
Yeah.
You'll get used to the water.
You'll get used to the water. It is what it is. And
The alternative, by the way, is hypothermia and slow and painful death.
True. So first of all, just do it. You have to take the step. That's the 0 to 1 is taking that step. And then once you're there, enjoy it. Make a learning out of it.
Enjoy it. I hate it that you say enjoy it, because every annoying tech checklist is like, the kick ass, have fun. I'm like, fun could be a good indicator if I'm the right person at the right place, but it couldn't be a thing in its own.
Okay, you're absolutely right, and
I'm sorry, I don't know why it got me so wild.
No, you're absolutely right. An anecdote: just a few weeks ago, I was supposed to pitch in front of 300 investors.
Jesus, that's like the GDP of Africa all in one place.
True. I think even more. It's London, so a lot of a lot of money is here. I was very nervous before going into the pitch, And my co-founder said, listen, just enjoy it, man. It's okay. He's like a very laid back individual. Like, how can I enjoy it? Look at the crowd. It's 300 people, and it's like a very small, packed auditorium. So everyone, it's feels weird,
tangible.
Yes.
You see them. It's not like a TED stage where you don't see the audience. Like, you can see if they're having fun, if they're on their phones.
But you just have to switch. It's a switch. It's a flip of a switch. Just enjoy it. You think, okay, I'll enjoy it. I'll do it. And I'll try to make that's the thing, especially when pitching. If you come with the right attitude and the right approach, the audience would enjoy more because, you're more relatable.
That's a huge thing, because how many pitches did they have to go through that day?
12
pitches.
Yes.
So that's a
3 minutes. 3 minutes each.
So that's a 90-minute, 2-hour event of pitches.
Yes.
Like, they want to be entertained.
Exactly. And you want to be entertaining. You want to be nice. You want to be friendly. You want to be heard.
By the way, 5 years before, you were the VC. You were the person in that room.
Yes.
Why were you scared?
Why was I scared? I think people forget easily. You forget you were there on the other side. And it's like you do it all over again. So it's...
What would venture capitalist Jonathan say to young founder Jonathan?
I'm still a young founder. First of all, I would say the exact same thing I said 2 minutes ago. Just do it. Just start.
Take the plunge.
Just take the plunge. I would say enjoy it. Although he wouldn't. He would suffer.
Why would he suffer? You didn't touch for the hour we're speaking. I was almost jealous of your life, though I know there were moments of suffering. Why would he suffer?
Oh, it's like a boot camp, right? In the army. It's like months of suffering. But when you look back at it, it's like, oh, it was an interesting
Look how quickly you moved back from the suffering to looking back at it. Nostalgia takes time to accumulate. You don't become nostalgic the day after.
First of all, I'm a very nostalgic person, so maybe that's my fault.
But, suffering, you're a founder now. What occupies your mind? You looked at your watch 10 minutes ago because you need to be out of here. There's things you need to do. What's on your mind?
Okay, on my mind now is how do I make things work? Make things work? You have so many things that need... it's not need fixing because they're okay for now, but they need to work. You need to make a product work, and it doesn't really work, but you need to tell other people that it works so you get funding. If you don't get funding, which your company won't work because you have a runway of just a few months, you need to make your family work, because if I don't get back by 6:30, I won't have 30 minutes with Tom before he goes to sleep. And those, I live for those 30 minutes. So you need to make the product work. You need to make the company work. You need to make your family work. You need to talk to your parents because,
I need to talk to my parents.
You need to talk to your parents.
You said that and I felt they're like, it's 2 missed calls now that
Yes.
I haven't gotten back to.
And your friends, you made so many friends throughout your life, and I'm someone who aspires to maintain good relationship with my friends, but
because your friends are also part of your safety net, and
Right.
they're part of the sense of confidence and security you have when taking the plunge, and that's something that comes across very clearly when speaking with you and when knowing your wife. You've built a unit that embraces those types of risk and that is tolerant of that and that has the confidence of taking on new challenges. And it's inspiring. It really is inspiring.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more words of wisdom you'd like to impart on people who listen and who are now considering moving from relatively cushioned jobs into the world of a founder?
Yes. I said just do it, but it has to be thoughtful. You have to feel that you do have that safety net to some degree, because if you don't, it will be much, much harder. Don't do it just for the sake of starting a company or starting a startup or being that, because it means to an end. It's not that. I would do a very intense research for what I want to do, for what problem I want to solve, unless I already have a burning desire to solve something. So do that, and listen to the second season of Startup Nightmares, I would say.
Jonathan, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience. What would be a good way to get in touch with you?
It's very easy. I'm all over social networks, from MySpace. If you find that profile, ignore it. LinkedIn, Facebook. My email is jonathan@clutch.ai. And yeah, I think that was it.
What should people feel comfortable reaching out to you with?
Anything they feel that I would be able to help them with. If they're investors, let's talk. If they want to work for an interesting company and they think that what I'm doing is interesting, then talk to me as well. If they want to work, if they want to switch to VC, if they want to switch to, a lot of people want to switch to high tech. They're in a low tech jobs and they want to do high tech. I get a lot of requests. A lot of people approach me and ask me, how do I do that? Like, how do I move into tech? So, I have some answers for that. Feel free to approach. And how's it like working in Google? If I should work in Google, I can answer that as well.
Jonathan, you're an especially lucky person that backs their luck with tremendous hard work and a lot of tolerance for risk, thriving in sink or swim situations. I hope that today would be beneficial to the people who listen to. And any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to Jonathan. The social media handles and emails will be down in the show notes. With that, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining and can't wait to see you again.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.